Good morning. I hope you're doing well. We have a message for you this morning. This is an amazing story that ought to shake your own spiritual foundation. Jesus has another encounter with another single person. This time is a man born blind all his life. We have seen how, for instance, Andrea Bocelli has surrounded himself with lots of helpers to compensate for his blindness. In Bocelli's case, though, he wasn't born blind. He became blind when he was but a young kid. Do you know a blind person? Have you ever met or shared anything with a blind person? We pause here to acknowledge that we do know of a loved one here at church. How was your experience when you met that blind person? For me, I just can't imagine walking around as a blind person. Have a hard time as it is trying to find my glasses to be able to read or to see the signs when I'm driving. Just think for a moment what life was like for this blind man. Probably considered a nobody. Probably always getting hand-me-down things. Probably always begging to be taken to a corner to sing a song and receive a coin out of someone's pity for him. Always a second-class citizen, always a burden to his own family. What's amazingly rude is how everyone asked Jesus, who sinned? Who sinned for this man to be punished by being born blind? Jesus calmly replies, no one sinned. Neither this man nor his parents sinned, said Jesus. Rather than asking any other question, the disciples point the finger at sin right away. It's like we program ourselves to think bad of someone else before finding out the will of God. It's like instead of saying how someone sinned, we could turn that around and say, how can we help? How can we help you? No, we immediately start thinking bad thoughts and questioning who sinned. Next is all the people's reactions. Jesus performs a miracle on the blind man. The blind man can now see. The blind man can walk on his own. The blind man does not need a cane anymore. But lo and behold, everyone's response around the miracle is the response of unbelief. No, this can't be. You're a different person. The blind man we know is probably in the same spot he usually is, begging. No, you're trying to trick us. No one rejoiced in the fact that the blind man received his sight. No one. We are so ungrateful at times, or maybe we just don't want to recognize that God's healing has no boundaries, has no specific day, and is not time-bound. God is God, and God can heal any time of the day or night. In this case, no one wanted to recognize that the blind man had received his sight. The people of the status quo wanted to maintain their own order. As the blind man continued to affirm that he was blind, but now he could see, that made the Pharisees angry. The Pharisees could not conceive of such a daring act during the Sabbath. Somebody, in this case Jesus, was disrupting their neatly set of Machiavellic order of religious rules for their society, for the Israelites. As we tread in this season of Lent, as we now face an invisible virus capable of attacking people, and us incapable of being able to counterattack it, we must remember that we are children of God. What does that mean, you may ask? It's simple. In today's message, or better yet, the message for today is for us to recognize the healing that God is doing continuously in our bodies. The wars that our body wages against any threat like this one of the virus or viruses goes unseen by us in our daily life. Why? Because every day our body is constantly bombarded with malwares, like the computers. We buy antivirus from companies and install it in our laptops to fight the viruses and malwares so that our laptop continues to do uninterrupted work. It is the same with our bodies. But do we slow down to give God the glory like the blind man did with Jesus? Do we allow time in our daily busy life to give thanks for all the unseen gifts we receive from God? We are supposed to practice our social distancing. It is a new word in our daily living in March 2020. It is a word as a result of the threat that this new virus represents for our health and well-being. As Christians, it is very difficult for us to accept this social distancing of 6 feet apart from each other. As we learn to practice this modality while they find a vaccine for the COVID-19, let us remind each other that this is not the way God has intended for us to relate to each other. Also, let us not put into practice the same rule of the social distancing that we get distance from God. That is the last thing on earth that God expects from God's people. Here then is the invitation for this Lenten season, lest we run the risk of being and acting just like the Pharisees in the Gospel of John. Although it's quite late and out of our time frame, I think we should ask for forgiveness for all those ungrateful people, including the parents of the blind man, where neither one of them rejoiced in the act of the miracle. It is pretty sad to read and learn that the miracle became second-hand of importance issue, because what was important for them was, why was this man being healed on a Sabbath day and under what authority? Our challenge is to focus on God's miracles, which are happening every day, and recognizing them and giving God the glory for His mercy and for His grace. Let's get the word grateful out of the dusty shelf. Let's shake the dust off of it. To be grateful is to be human and to join the divine. Let's rejoice in the fact that God cares for us. God cares for the blind man. God cares for our blindness. God cares so much that He doesn't want us to live in fear. Please remember, don't let fear be the driving force in your life. Lead a life of thankfulness to God. Lead a life of helpfulness to others. Lead a life of challenging yourself to be a better person each new day. And lead a life that you too can rejoice in the healing that God does to someone else without letting it bother you. And with that, we say amen. We have a thought for the week for you. Paul used to say, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. That you can find in Philippians 4, verse 13. Philippians 4, verse 13. Please allow this verse to run slowly in your head as you go on your daily chores and activities. I know you can, and God knows that it's also possible for you. And the text for this Sunday came from the Gospel of John, chapter 9, verses 1 through 41. Chapter 9, verses 1 through 41. Grace and peace to you.